Hi, Scott Comer, a one-man band here. The next interview you're going to watch is between me and a couple of teachers that are preparing their first year in education. Really interesting stuff. Before we begin, I wanted to let you know that a few things were going on technically in this conversation. Bad computer connections, bad microphone connections, my camera battery went dead. In the end, it left for a lot of splicing of the video and just trying to fit pieces in the right place, more than I would typically want to have done. But I decided I'd rather have this conversation out there for people to listen to than not put it out there. So my apologies for that, but there is good reason for it. Also, during this interview, one of the teachers asked me about my feelings about composer diversity, Black Lives Matter, and our civil unrest that's going on right now in this country. Now, I answered this to the best of my ability, and I stand by my answer. However, since that interview, Brad Mariska and his podcast with Jerry Lukehart titled Band in Minnesota, they dove a little bit deeper into it. And so I'd strongly recommend you check that podcast out in general, but specifically that episode, which I'll link down below in the description. So with that being said, enjoy the next episode of Masters of the Musiverse here on One Man Band. All right, welcome to One Man Band and our Masters of the Musiverse series. Today we are speaking with two teachers that are preparing their first year in education. It's been almost 20 years since my first year, so I'm looking forward to being reminded of what it's like to come into this job with fresh eyes. Before we begin, remember to hit subscribe to the One Man Band channel and visit our Patreon page to see if there's a way you can help us continue this adventure. So let's start with Ashley, and I'm going to ask you your name, even though I've said it, and your college you attended.
My name is Ashley Olson, and I attended Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota, and got a Bachelor of Music Education degree.
Excellent. And Noah?
My name is Noah Johnson. I also attended Concordia College, and my degree was a Bachelor of Arts degree in music education.
Shout out to Concordia College, because I also went to Concordia College and have a very strong connection with the school and the current band director, Peter Haberman. And that's one of the reasons I connected with these two. Thank you, Peter Haberman. All right, and Ashley, I'm going to go right back to you now and ask you, like, how did the job market feel? Like, was it hard to get an interview being a first-year teacher?
It was hard in terms of it being a pandemic, and we didn't really have access to see the school district and visit the locations and meet with a lot of the teachers in person. So I guess once we had practice in the world of Zoom of getting to know people and relate to them over things like Zoom and Google Hangouts, it was a little difficult to work through interviews sometimes because you couldn't always read all of that body language that they were giving. But overall, it's been great because educators have put together resources that have made first-year teachers and other teachers who are searching for new jobs, making those resources accessible, like EdPost and compiling of different job sources. So it was really helpful to whomever put those together, because those were kind of my saving graces in looking for jobs.
So Noah, you're on the other side of it, and there's some teachers that aren't. What do you have advice maybe to give to anybody that's in the position you were a few months ago, where they're trying to find a job? Is there anything you would recommend or tell them?
Also be open-minded to a job where you might not be as comfortable. I know I was more hesitant to apply for K through 12 jobs or jobs that involve general music, and so I would say stay open-minded.
What about you, Ashley? Any advice now that you're on the other side of things?
It can sometimes feel overwhelming. I got my job a little later in the market, so when people are constantly talking about getting jobs, it can feel overwhelming and kind of defeating when everyone is getting a job and you're like, why aren't I? And then looking back, a lot of the positions I wasn't offered, people had master's degrees or like 5 to 10 years of experience, and like it's just hard for first-year teachers to kind of meet those qualifications that the school districts are looking for. So,
all right, Noah, you are looking at your first year of teaching, and I'm curious, you woke up this morning, what was the first thing on your mind? What are you thinking about?
I would say programming music and starting to score study some music that I want my ensembles to play. I haven't had a chance to look through the library at my school a lot, but that's something I'm looking forward to doing. So I've been thinking about that a lot. I've also been thinking a lot about how I want to approach beginning lessons. We're going to do a summer band program, me and my middle school counterpart, in mid-August. And so thinking about how I want to teach these 5th and 6th graders who've never picked up an instrument before, how to form an embouchure, how to make a good sound, how to fall in love with their instrument. So those are the things I'm thinking about the most.
Yeah, right now I'm thinking a lot about my summer lessons as well. I start in about a month, and a lot of planning has to go in place. So scheduling, reaching out to parents are a few things that I'm really focusing on. My predecessor is being very helpful and is working with me to work through a lot of the really nitpicky parts of my position. So she's been very helpful.
Do you know, does your school have a mentorship program?
There is a mentorship program. My mentor will be an art teacher. So sort of in the same realm in the fine arts side of the building, but yeah, that's going to be really helpful.
Yeah, they had mentioned it a little bit, that I'd be paired up with a more experienced teacher to like work through a few things as well. Yet I'm the only band position at my school, so at least it'll be an experienced teacher and they'll know the ropes of all of the office administration and things like that. So yes, we do.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to tell you is it doesn't matter if they're in music, because your bigger questions are going to be, where's the copy room? Where's the form for the thing that I got to do with the kids? Like, what are some of your strengths as a new teacher that you're going to be bringing to your department and your district?
For me to be able to bring my knowledge of percussion, with that being my primary instrument, that'll be super helpful. I am also super excited to work with extracurricular ensembles. I've got a lot of experience playing in jazz band. And so I'm really excited to work with those ensembles as well.
I feel like I love creating connections with students, and I think that's going to be a big part of my classroom is just a great community. I am just really excited to teach my beginners.
A little bit on the flip side of things, what kind of things are making you most apprehensive or anxious about the school year? And Ashley,
like a lot of the finance and budget stuff is freaking me out a little bit right now. Things I'm a little nervous about melding into the community, but I think those worries will pass away once I actually get there and spend longer times.
I echo Ashley's sentiment. I am really scared by budgeting and financing and dealing with instrument repair and all those things.
well, and so this is how I know that you guys are going to be awesome at what you're doing this year, that your students are going to feel lucky to have you, because you don't seem like you're worried about your interaction with your students. It's the other stuff. It's the paperwork. I'll agree, like the financial stuff is one of my least favorite things to deal with. I would much rather be in a room. You could give me 1,000 high school students in a room, and I'll be much happier than having to balance a book. But there are people that'll help you guys with that. So again, another thing, just ask questions and lean on people.
What are some important ways to prepare for the upcoming school year during the summertime? I've already gotten into my classroom a little bit and gotten a taste of, what the instruments, the school on instruments, how the schedule works. But otherwise, it's kind of daunting. So what are some things I can do to prepare?
As much as you can familiarize yourself with past practices by band directors, I think that's important. One of the things that I really stress with young teachers is you really have to try to become an insider before you can make changes. I'll tell you a story about a guy I heard about. He was literally given the podium by his predecessor, and he got up on the podium and he said, a lot of things are going to change here. And from day one, it's now like him versus his students. Instead of coming at it from a place of like becoming an insider and then like having that change happen as a group. Familiarizing yourself with old programs and concert recordings can be a really good thing, so you know where your students are at when, or where they're likely to be at when they come to you. Class lists as soon as you can get them. If you can get them with faces, it's going to help you so much, because faces and names are 100% about connection with students. If I know you by name, if I can call you down the hallway, now we can connect on basketball or hunting or whatever it might be. On the flip side of things, if I can call you by name when I'm having to deal with discipline stuff, like that's a huge starter.
Even though it's just my first year of teaching this fall, I'll be expected to travel to Florida. So what is your advice for planning travel and chaperoning a trip like that?
I think the first thing is to get a travel company. I know some band directors don't like to travel with travel companies because they feel like they can piecemeal it better themselves. And there's probably some truth in saving money, but especially as a first year teacher, I would just rely on the people that do it and do it well. And so find out recommendations. I'll tell you, here in Minnesota, I've used Leisure Time Tours for just about every one of my trips. And I've always been happy with them. You can't be over prepared for travel. You should never stop preparing. Just keep on finding the bugs and the glitches and whatever it might be. Definitely know the cancellation rules and make sure there are some. Make sure your administrators know what tour company you're using and what the clauses are, because this should not fall. These are the kind of things that shouldn't fall on you. They're above your pay grade, so to speak. Payment plans, like you come up with a payment plan and the tour company needs it on January 28th. You make sure you get it by at least January 21st from your kids, because you're going to have trickle in. Organizing things like bus lists and room lists, get those dates from the tour company so you can plan to do it a month before they need it. One of the biggest things, I'm actually going to have a link in the YouTube description for this, is expectations, like a handbook. You should absolutely have a handbook that you give kids. You can decide when the best timing for that is. We usually go a couple weeks before the trip. That lays out all the different aspects of the trip, your responsibilities. And although I'm not a big disciplinarian, what kind of consequences there are for your actions. And tied into that, another opportunity to talk to your administration about different things that kids might do where the administration would say they can't travel with you anymore. If a kid is on academic probation, can they still travel? If they've had legal problems, like a minor, can they still travel? If they're in school suspension at some point in time, can they still travel? And then a piece to that has to be, if they can't travel and they've paid $1,000, what happens to that money? Is it stay there? Do we give it back to it? So those are only questions that can be answered by your particular administration. And so follow that through as much as you can. And use a bus company you can trust. Literally, you're putting your life and your students' lives in their hands. A lot of times you're doing evening travel, depending on what your district wants. And you want to know that it's a bus company that has policies that's going to keep you and your students safe.
But considering we're at such a poignant time in history, with Black Lives Matter going on and civil rights issues being raised, how can we have that dialogue with our students, not only to make everyone in the classroom feel included, but to help develop that sense of community?
So my long answer really is that I'm still learning. And I find daily, when it comes to these issues of civil unrest and where those things lie in music education, that I'm still learning and I have a lot to learn. One of the most recent things that's come up that I've struggled with is that a bunch of our old folk music is from the minstrel era of American music history. I love the tune of "Oh Susanna." I had no idea until 2 weeks ago what it was about and what its history was. And I mean, I really struggle with that, because I'm I like the melody. The melody hasn't done any harm to anybody, but it's not that, right? It's about historically what that whole era did and what it represents. And I hate what it represents. And so I've just recently, like after just absorbing this and thinking about it, just come to the realization that all those minstrel era songs need to be put on a shelf and placed there for academic study, and we need to find something else for our students. One of the things I've tried to do is seek out underrepresented composers. I try to learn their music and find where it fits into my curriculum, and when it's needed, where I need to make room for it in my curriculum. And I think it's important to understand that I'm not going to put somebody that's underrepresented in my curriculum because they're underrepresented. It's because they're great composers. And then it's a feeling of like, I need to have the students know the music of Erica Savano because she writes great music, not because she's a female. And I'm working with a guy named Daryl Johnson II, and it's not because he's a black man. It's because he writes great music. The problem is that we are so. I mean, it's just been decades upon decades of having only white male composers that catalog is so huge, and so we do have to seek opportunities to like bring those underrepresented composers in. Here's what I want to do is shout out like Libby Larson, Alex Shapiro, Erica Savano, Daryl Johnson II, Brent Michael Davids, Kimberly Archer, Jennifer Higgedon, Julie Garreau, Adolphus Hailstork, because their names need to be known. They need to be associated with what we do as band directors and musicians, and we need to play their music as much as we can. Good resources for you if you want to dive into this more. The Institute for Composer Diversity is a like a website I frequently go to just to get names because they're underrepresented means that they're not always in the premier catalog stuff of like J.W. Pepper or something. So you have to sometimes get their name from a resource like that and go find their music. I got a friend, Dr. Charles Wise of the Edina Public Schools, and he does a lot to commission underrepresented composers. So he's also a great resource for people. So the question is, how do we show our students of color that we care for them? But I think the thing that we need to do with our students of color to show that we care is to care about them, right? I mean, like, I want to get to know your name. I want to be able to engage with you in the hallways because I care about you as a student. And so, I mean, maybe that's just too easy of an answer, but it's like, I don't want to treat them any differently because they're not. They're developing students that have hormonal problems, that do creative things, that do amazing athletic things, that are strong in academics, because they're musicians, by the way. And they deserve every bit of respect when it comes to that. One thing that I can tell you that can help you and help them connect with you being that kind of accepting person more is hang pictures of the composers that you're working on. It's going to be a good self-check for you because it was the first time I did this. I thought it was a great idea, and I had the composers for the whole year up. Everybody was a white male except for one female. And it was like, it was like someone punched me in the gut. And it really opened my eyes up to like what, like when we talk about systematic things, like that's part of a systematic problem that we want to try to be in front of. So
I just want to say thanks for being willing to talk about that, because I agree, when you choose to have that conversation, it can be scary. You don't want to say something wrong, but also it would be much worse to just ignore that discussion as a whole.
So have you used any sort of like level progression in your lessons? Say like people use like karate belts or different things like that. Have you used any level progression like that? And how has that worked for you?
So our beginning band program started band karate this last year. And we have pretty good feeling about it. We had all kinds of missteps and didn't do this and that right, but I fully accept that that's part of the process. I try to polish it as much as I can, but I'm someone that doesn't really learn until I do it. And so we dive in and we figure out what doesn't work and what does. We use Standard of Excellence for that. We were able during the distance learning to use smart music, and we kind of liked it for the belts, but we feel like it's financially a little bit out of reach for us. So we're not sure we're going to pursue that next year. In the high school, I also do levels. We don't call them that. They're called performance assessments. Up until this year, I've had 3 levels, and you had to like get to the 3rd one to be in the top ensemble. And they're just self-created from exercises I found that I like, that I think are important. And I think everybody's levels will be different because we all have, you know, different expectations. And I'm actually going to 12 levels for next year. Hopefully I find the time this summer. And the idea would be that they have to get to level 7 or 8 to get into the top ensemble. And then levels 9 through 12 are like, you know, still pushing my top level kids, because having the 3 levels was very helpful for a lot of different reasons that I won't go into right now unless you want me to. But it also made the kids feel like, my sophomores in particular that were really good, that got into the top ensemble, they thought they were done because they hit level 3. That's the highest level. No more work to be done. And so we've had some issues there, but yeah, that's kind of how we do leveling in Fergus. All right, so that's it here for Masters of the Musiverse with Noah Johnston and Ashley Olson, first-year teachers. Really appreciate your guys' time. We hope that you found this informative. You know, make comments down below if you have some questions about the things we talked about. But thank you, everyone, for joining us today.